watching Let's Chat.
Welcome back and good morning. The Chattanooga State Humanities Department has got a really cool event coming up pertaining to writers. Doesn't matter if you're a published author or maybe you just want to get your foot in that particular pool of water. Check this out. It is Writers at Work 2023 with Ariel Francisco. Ariel is sitting here in the center. Ariel, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Along with Erica Lux. You are the director of Chat State's Writers at Work, correct?
One of them, yes.
One of them, all right. So you were supposed to bring Joel Henderson with you, right?
Yes, he's here, but he wanted to be off camera.
Who cares what he wanted? How you doing over there? Tell me about what this Writers at Work workshop is all about.
The purpose of our program is to expose our students to some writers who are currently living, who are still active in writing, because so much of what they read, these people, you know, Shakespeare, all these people who have died hundreds of years ago.
Right.
And so we're showing them that just like they are writers at work, these authors are also living their lives and still able to produce writing. And we also want to combat the often negative stereotypes portrayed of Southerners in the media. So that's why we focus on Southern authors, to show that there's a variety.
There's a whole different world out there, isn't there? Ariel Francisco, tell me your story. You are a poet of, and you are the author of A Sinking Ship is Still a Ship. First of all, what got you into writing to begin with, however many years ago?
Ooh, that's tough. I just grew up loving to read. I used to get in trouble, you know, in class for reading the textbook while the teacher was talking and that sort of thing. My dad is a huge book nerd. I grew up in a house just full of books, and he writes as well. So sometime between finishing high school and starting college, I had the idea to see if I could write poems. I was always reading novels and stuff, but I never had any interest in writing a novel. It seemed too big to hold in my head at one time, but a poem was kind of small enough to imagine.
So what was that epiphany when you hit the point where you thought, wow, not only can I do this, I'm pretty good at it?
Well, I went into college as a marine biology major and immediately failed college algebra and chemistry. So I switched to English, which was the only thing I had an interest in. And my university, Florida International University down in Miami, had poetry workshops. And so I thought, well, this would be a good place because I'll have deadlines, I'll have grades, I'll have to share my work in front of people, which made me very nervous. So it was almost like a trial by fire.
Sure.
Let me see if I can do this.
Fully understandable.
Yeah.
So when you're doing a lecture or your presentation at the Writers Workshop, what's the one thing you want everybody to leave with? What's the one takeaway message?
That poetry is still being written, that it still exists and it can impact people's lives, and it can be a way to exist in the world, especially for younger people and people who feel like they might not have those spaces.
I want to underscore that. You said poetry still impacts people's lives, because a lot of times some excellent poetry never makes the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah.
It never makes your local bookstore, but yet there's a whole lot of it out there. Why do you think people have kind of turned their back on poetry, and what can we do to get them to turn it back around?
Oh gosh.
That's a good question.
I don't even feel like it's just poetry. I feel like it's just reading in general. But poetry's so great because it doesn't take a lot of time. You know, you can pick it up, and especially with his poetry, it starts like you're in the middle of a conversation, and it's so accessible. And our students are really identifying with it. And so it's something that they can read on their way to class or.
It doesn't require a huge time commitment all at once.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know where it's been lost, but it's interesting the way people still reach for it. You know, when do people read poems at weddings, right?
Yeah.
At funerals, eulogies, and even at presidential inaugurations, right? That's often the only times people encounter poetry.
You think it's fair to say that poetry, when read by the right person, can kind of inspire them to want to write poetry as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you, you know, it's curious because I think if you ask people, there's always often a point in their lives where they wrote some kind of poetry, whether it was as a kid in high school. At some point they lose it. But if you ask, you know, almost anyone, there is like a certain point where they kept a journal and they wrote these little poems or lines or thoughts or whatever it might be.
Doesn't matter what you write, don't ever throw it away.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you could come back and find that in an empty or in a file folder in a drawer 10 years from now, and that could be your key into writing for a living. So tell us the particulars about the workshop. When's it going on and where will it be?
Well, Tuesday night at the Hunter Museum, there's an interview where people, I'm actually going to be interviewing our author, and people will have a chance to ask questions and get their book signed. It's a free event, starts at 6 o'clock, and lovely catered event. So come hear from our author, ask him questions, get your book signed, and have some some snacks with us. And then Thursday afternoon, there's a virtual event where he's going to discuss his work as a translator. And that one does require registration through our website. It's free, but we have to know what email address to send the Zoom link to.
All right, there you have the information. It'll pop up on your screen momentarily. And remember, check this out, both Tuesday and for Thursday as well. You can email them at chatbigread.org. That's chat with 2 T's, bigread.org. We'll be right back with more of Let's Chat.